Hello everybody and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Euro 2020. One day to go, James.
Yeah, shit, it's Thursday, isn't it?
It's Thursday.
Soon come round. Well, that feels like it's also been ages since the Premier League season finished.
I haven't even logged in and created an account on Fantasy Euro yet.
Have you not?
No, because it lets you do your team without creating an account, doesn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, so when you go to the website, it lets you start playing around and putting a team together without actually logging in.
So you've got a team set up, but...
I haven't got a team set up. I've been playing around with a team.
Okay, make sure you're logged in and set up
but
properly,
I have to actually turn my team. But the reason I haven't actually gone whole hog is because I'm waiting for this podcast, mate. I'm waiting for you to tell me all the players that I should have that I haven't even considered or thought about. So, off we go.
I think for myself, there's probably I'm down to kind of probably a short list of probably about 20-ish or so players. Okay. A little bit subject on what the Italy team may be tomorrow night, because obviously remember we've got up until deadline, so you'll see the Italy teams. If you want to make some changes to your Italy players, you obviously can last minute, or Turkey of course. But I'm probably going to drop about 60-70 names into this podcast, so I don't know how much it is going to help you.
No, it definitely will. And yeah, so some of these are relevant later in the group stages. Some of these are relevant in the beginning. I think you and me are both very similar in that we are playing a limitless game week 2 strategy.
Yes.
So we'll be picking a team for game week 1 and 3, and then tearing it apart in game week 2.
I think those who are not planning to limitless in match day 2 should be aware that probably in some of the stuff I'm going to say, there's going to be some natural bias towards certain teams who perhaps have better matches for game weeks 1 and 3. You might be thinking you're going to limitless in match week 3, and you think, well, that doesn't work for me. Of course, that's absolutely fine. So apologies in advance for bias, but yeah, I'm headspace into what my own bloody team's going to be.
No,
right?
of course.
Look at you. You've got the website open.
Prices
you're going to put
players
into your team as you go.
No, it's more just in case we need to know the price of a specific player, and we don't have. How is N'Golo Kante 44% owned?
I can't answer that. So I think what's happened here a little bit is in the Champions League game, you'd win points for ball recoveries.
Okay.
But as far as I can see in the rules, and I've triple checked, there are no points awarded for ball recoveries. But obviously Kante in Champions League format, decent, right?
Yeah, that'd be
He'd
very
probably
good.
be getting you 4 points or so quite
all
regularly.
The time. Yeah, for sure.
That's the only thing I can think that people have played UEFA. Plus, I guess it's the influence of well-known player, man of the match in the Champions League final, man of the match in both semi-finals against Real Madrid. People go, I know him.
And he's cheap.
You need to fill your squad with a 5.5 million midfielder. You go, I know N'Golo Kante.
You know he's going to play.
He's good. He'd play in any team, wouldn't he?
Yeah, so I suppose there is advantages. Let's go Group A through to whatever group it goes to F. We'll go through the teams in each group. There'll be some that we can probably just swerve because we ain't even going to bother looking at, and others that might be interesting. But Group A obviously is the first one that kicks off with Turkey, Italy tomorrow, and then Switzerland and Wales. So the Italians, James.
So I've probably got more Italians on my shortlist at the moment than any other team, because obviously we get the benefit of that team. So don't have to be committed to certain selections at the moment. So for example, if you want to go with Bonucci or Spinazzola, who are both 5.5 million, you can drop down if suddenly there's a little bit of a shock in that Italian lineup. I know in the team that the Athletic predicted last week, Francesco Acerbi, who is a centre-back at Lazio, who is 5 million, it was in their predicted Italy lineup. But I haven't seen anybody else talk about him at all. There is a little bit of a debate at the moment in the Italian media about which formation they're going to play. They've been on this long unbeaten run of around about 27 games where they've largely played a back four during that spell. There is some thought, though, in the Italian media at the moment that this squad might be best suited to playing a back three.
Okay.
We think they're probably going to stay with a back four. I would say defensively, Spinazzola I would probably prefer over Bonucci at 5.5, left back of Roma. He's obviously going to get further forward than Bonucci would from centre-back. I'd prefer him in that duel. Florenzi at 6 million. I don't think you need to pay the extra over Spinazzola, personally. Lots going with Donnarumma in goal, which is completely understandable. I just kind of reference back what I said on Monday about who you pairing him with. Just be a little bit conscious of that. So I see a lot, for example, as I've said, going Donnarumma and Haraguchi, the Finnish goalkeeper. And if Donnarumma gets a 2-3 pointer on Friday night, what do? Do you actually gamble and bring the Finnish goalkeeper in? I think there's a fair chance you don't. So I would want a better backup keeper. But then the question is, do you want to be spending 10 million or so on goalkeepers? Attacking wise, I think if you're setting up, if you can afford to kind of bust Lorenzo Insigne in your team at the moment, that's not a bad idea. He's obviously 8.5 million and the most expensive of the attacking mids of interest from Italy. Chiesa has been talked about a lot.
I mean, 7 ownership million. Is pretty high at 20%.
Well, it's down to 20%. Insigne's 9%. Chiesa's Italian record is not great. 1 goal in 25 caps. He's had a very good season at Juventus this season. The one I'm keeping an eye on is Barella, who's the same price as Chiesa. And I think there's a chance he might play, and it might be who I go with, actually, if he's in the team. Reason being is, if they go with a 4-3-3, if Barella is in the team, he's likely to be partnered with Jorginho, who's 6 million, and Verratti. Jorginho probably is the penalty taker for Italy, by the way. But if it's that free, Barella's the one that will break in late. His ownership at the moment is 3%. And that's probably my only way into a differential captain as such during the week. So I don't mind punting that opening day possibly on Barella if he's in the team. I think Immobile at 10 million is probably a little bit expensive. They've got Belotti in reserve, the Torino forward. The other thing that I think is really important, which not a lot of people mention just about the tournament on a whole at the moment, is it's 5 subs. And that makes, I think, people like Chiesa, Insigne, and players of that ilk in similar teams. I'm thinking kind of Ferran Torres at Spain, these type of players. These kind of wide attackers. These are the guys that likely get subbed first, aren't they?
Yeah, you do see a lot of wingers get pulled off. So, yeah.
I mean, think of that situation, say, for example, if it's England, it's Sterling, Foden and Mount, it might bring Rashford, Grealish and Sancho on for the 3 of them during the game. Yeah, not only that,
right? If you're 1 or 2 up and you just want to close a game out and you want to stick an extra defensive player on, you'll get rid of one of your attacking players to shore it up. So, no pun intended.
So you always run the risk, I think, with a player like Chiesa, if he's not having the best game, for example, that he's a 50-minute and it's a 1 point, and that's definitely one of the players you're obviously removing to your bench. And that's obviously okay. But I'm a little put off. I'm not convinced where I'm going to go with it. I think I'm going to go without them defensively because I'm likely to go with a block of 4.5 million defenders. I just think there's more than enough good 4.5 million defenders. Gives me a little bit extra in the midfield, allows me 3 premium forwards up front. I think if Barella's in the team, he's the one I might gamble on. If a Kirby suddenly lands in that Italian team at 5, I might relook at what I'm doing defensively, possibly. I think it's Barella. If he's not in the team, I'll probably fall back to Chiesa at the same price, I think.
Interesting. I was planning the opposite, James, in that... what formation are you playing? Do you know, as your preferred?
3 up front, but, I mean, you start with the players on the bench who are playing latest in the game weeks. It doesn't really matter, does it?
It doesn't. But if you were to pick a strongest 11, would yours be a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3? 3-4-3, I'm assuming.
I think I'd possibly be going 4-3-3.
4-3-3.
Possibly, yeah.
See, I'm going to try and go 3-5-2 or 3-4-3 as my preferred. And with my 4 defenders, I'm going to try and pick 2 from Italy. I just want to set and forget kind of defence. I don't really want to be pissing about. And 2 Italians in there for me just does the job nicely.
There's lots are going to be going double defensive Italy and stuff. Lots.
I think unlike some, I'm going to go quite strong at the back. I know you mentioned there's loads of 4.5s. I think I might be going the opposite.
Just bear in mind when Yilmaz scores after 5 minutes on Friday night for Turkey, that's your double defensive gone, and that's 2 Italian players heading to your bench probably.
Well, it's fine because I've got subs, right? The whole point of the game.
Yeah, of course.
Switzerland, any thoughts on Swiss?
I really like Ricardo Rodriguez as an attacking left back. from Torino. He's got 9 goals in his international career. He will be on many of the set pieces. He's got a very powerful shot on him. I don't think I can justify the 5.5 million. I think Switzerland would probably best sum up by Seferovic, the forward, who's 0% owned at the moment. Shaqiri, 2% owned. He's the only one that I'm really considering.
7 million seems a good price for Shaqiri.
It's reasonable. I know he's aging a little bit now, but he's very much a talisman for them, isn't he?
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't think he's the worst punt. What I like about Switzerland, and there are other teams like this, why they stand out for me, I think, from the non-Italy 3 teams in Group A is, if I'm limitless in 2, they play Wales first, they play Turkey last, so therefore I'm not using their assets versus Italy.
Yeah.
And that's why Switzerland appeals a little bit. So I think in terms of who I would, if I was likely to get another player from Group A outside of Italy, Shaqiri for me right now is probably the most likely. I think the 7 million is a reasonable price.
Wales. We spoke a bit about Wales with our friend Ross on Monday, Tuesday, whichever day it went out. Bale, bit expensive. Ramsey, also a bit expensive. Maybe Dan James as a cheaper alternative, but none of them really are better than what else is out there in the market, right?
I think so. Danny Ward at 1%, if you want a 4.5 million goalkeeper, it's possibly not the worst call. I think if you were going defensive, you'd go with Roberts, 0% owned, 4.5, likely to play right wing back. Bale, I agree, 9.5 feels a bit expensive, particularly when I think they just have to be a little bit cautious with his minutes now. We spoke on Tuesday's pod about the idea that maybe even if they were winning in games, they might actually take him off now.
Yeah.
The interesting ones, really, for me, are the other midfielders. There are 3 names that are interesting. Dan James is the cheapest at 6.5. We think probably starts. I think if I had to go in, that's where I'd go. We think there's a chance that Ramsey 8.5 or Harry Wilson 7.5 could play as a false 9.
Correct.
Now, if they do, they're potentially interesting, but I don't know which way that's going to go. I'm not overly convinced anyway at those prices. I think if Ramsey and Wilson were at Dan James's price, I'd be a little bit more tempted to take a punt. There's a better case for taking a punt with these players that are playing earlier in the match week.
Right.
He wasn't in the right position. It didn't work for me. Okay, I can sub him out for a player on the bench. You're better off taking your punts from kind of the first 4 groups rather than groups E and F, for example. But I can't see me starting with a Wales player personally.
No. Turkey is an interesting one. Yilmaz is the striker is at 8 or 8.5.
So the great season for the French champions, Lille.
Will it translate?
Not convinced enough. Kawanoglu, I think, is one where finding midfielders we think will get attacking returns is quite difficult, and he's an interesting one. Like 8.5 feels too expensive to me. I know a few are going with a goalkeeper, Kakia of Trabzonspor. It's 4.5, so that would maybe do the job. I actually, in a way, I don't mind that if people just want to go with an out there punt, something differential for the opening day, and don't want to go with Italy, although I think Italy will do very well in the tournament. Go with a Turkish player, differential captain on the opening night. And obviously, if it fails, you can move the captaincy and remove the player for a substitute as well. I don't actually mind people starting with Kakia. Because of exactly that, what I'm saying about Donnarumma, do you want to spend 10 million on goalkeepers? You could go Kakia, go with another 4.5. You're saving £1 million or so. I don't see me starting with a Turkey player, though.
No one else of interest there.
Not for me. Siyuncu has got a little bit of ownership through popularity. It's 5 million. It's so many good 4.5 million players in this game.
Group B is one that Belgium you'd think would walk, but Denmark obviously a decent side as well. Finland, Russia, not as convinced by it. So let's start with the big boys in Group B. Belgium.
Do you want the shot prediction first?
That Denmark are going to win the group.
I think Denmark will win this group.
I'm sure you said that on one of the pods. It'll be interesting to see if they do. I mean, they do have home advantage in a few of the games and stuff. So yeah, maybe. But I'm getting Romelu Lukaku at 11 million is a lock for me.
Same as that, yeah.
Other than that, I'm not really looking anywhere else at Belgium. Quite expensive. If I knew Kevin De Bruyne was going to be fit, I mean, he will be fit, but we just don't know when. Or what have you, I would potentially consider him, but not really.
I think the reason Lukaku is very difficult to go against, if I compare to Kane and Lukaku for a moment, So when Kane plays on Sunday, you've got alternatives with Holland in terms of captaincy on Sunday night. People like Depay. I know people are starting to look at Weghorst, who's cheaper up front. There are a few Dutch players. You get maybe even a couple of the Austrian players because they're playing North Macedonia as captaincy alternatives when Kane's actually got a difficult fixture. Lukaku does have a difficult fixture too, in my opinion, against Russia. Stadium will be 50% full in St. Petersburg. But I think from a captaincy perspective Saturday, he's going to be massively captained. It's early in the game week. I feel like the safe play is to go with Lukaku. He's also got Finland last. So for myself, obviously looking limitless too, holding through for free. As I said, I think Denmark will do very well in this group actually. So I think Belgium might be one of those teams who when they land in match week 3 will need to win. And yeah. I'm not doubting at all for a second that Belgium will get out of this group, and it will be no surprise if they do win the group. I just think Denmark might be being underestimated a little bit. Romelu Lukaku, I don't think I've had a draft without. Is he most owned at the moment?
45%.
Must be very close.
He is indeed.
Yeah.
It is close, but yeah, he's ahead at 45% at the moment.
There are some interesting players, but not interesting players in a number of places. Courtois at 6 million is probably one of the better 6 million goalkeeper choices if you want to do that. I think that's one though where I'd rather go with Donnarumma personally. Meunier at 5.5 I think is probably the outstanding one of the more expensive defenders, but it's difficult to make a case for any of them when Jason Denayer is 4.5, highly likely to play in a back three for Belgium, probably as the central of the three. His ownership 16%. Might well increase the closer we get to the deadline. This is what I mean about these 4.5 million defenders. You've got a defender there who, whatever you think of his ability, and has improved a lot at Lyon. You've got a 4.5 million defender for a team that's potentially capable of winning the tournament, right? And most people will think Belgium are going to win this group comfortably. So I think Denayer's going to be in a lot of teams. De Bruyne, we think, won't play the first game. It's 10.5. It's still in 25% of teams at the moment, which is
it's crazy.
This is what the non-casuals need, is something like this.
Yeah,
I can't see him playing the first game. We think it's possible that he might wear a face mask and play. There is a suggestion he might not even play in the group stage at all. And I think the better Belgium start, the less of a need to force him in quickly, right? Eden Hazard is 10 million. Form nowhere at the moment. I would have liked Dries Mertens at 9 million as a midfielder, but he's ranked as a forward. Yuri Tielemans actually at 6.5 is probably the most the most interesting way. It's fair. He's fair. Of their pivot, he's the most likely of the two to be allowed to join in. Many watched the Nations League game of England in Antwerp. Wasn't it in Antwerp? Somewhere in Belgium. Last autumn, would have seen Tielemans score a lovely goal from the edge of the area. You get an extra point for that, by the way, Suj.
You do.
Denayer, I think, is almost definite for me. Can't see me not starting with him unless there's an issue I find out about. Tielemans is a maybe. I can't justify those expensive ones. And Lukaku's a definite.
Yeah. Good run down there. In terms of the lesser teams in that group, let's start with Russia. Any Russian players in your thoughts whatsoever?
No. So I think like Zhuba, he's big unit, powerful forward. You might remember from 2018. 1% owned. I don't think there's a Russian player with more than 1% ownership.
There are 6 or 7 players with 1%.
Yeah.
If I hover over it, might give me 1 point something. But Golovin has got 1%. M. Fernandez.
Golovin's the one I would like as the punt, 7.5. 1% owned as well. If I had to punt one, I think that's where you're punting a bit in this format, really. It's probably in the midfield area. If I had to punt one, it would be Golovin. Otherwise, for me, no. I think they're weaker than Denmark, personally. Every chance they'll go through as one of the best third places, in my opinion. Particularly, you would expect them to beat Finland if needed. Golovin would be the one I'd punt. Wouldn't be paying 8.5 for Zhuba, personally. They're a no from me.
No. Finland, basically, Hradecki...
We're all having him, aren't we?
...is at 35%, and then the rest of the ownership completely bombs off. You've got Pukki at 5%, and then back to the 1%ers. I don't know if I am.
Yeah, I'm highly likely to go with him, I think.
If I need to find money, because at the moment my second goalkeeper, we can talk about Denmark in a minute, is Kasper Schmeichel, but I could probably not bother with Kasper Schmeichel, and that's £10.5 million in goalkeepers. But
I just feel like if you go with him and a 4.5 who's playing later in the match week, then you're 8.5 on the goalkeepers. Start him at Denmark. You're not expecting nothing. If a miracle happens and it's 0-0 and he saves a penalty, then obviously he sits there, doesn't he? You'd probably be sitting there wishing you captained the bastard as well. But at 35%, it's just worth going with, in my opinion.
Pukki, not of interest.
No, what 5% owns 7 million. It's a fair price, but it's not justifiable. No. I don't think.
So if you think Denmark are going to win this group, then you've definitely got a load of Danes in your team, mate.
I might start with 3.
Tell me who.
But I don't have a big shortlist for them. Wind, the 6 million forward who's 0% owned, is fairly interesting, but there's some debate whether he's going to play or not, and I don't think it's worth the gamble. But I think he could be great as a 6 million forward if he did play. And I think if Denmark go deep in the tournament, you might find he works his way in. I think Kasper Schmeichel, 20% owned, 5 million goalkeeper, is a very reasonable option. I like Christian Eriksen. I feel like he's the powerful midfielder I might end up going with because, like I said, I like them. His ownership is relatively low at 5%. He'll be on a lot of the set pieces for Denmark, including probably the penalties. 9 million is not underpriced, but it's just at the point that I find is acceptable and affordable. I think I may go with him, and there's every chance I might go double defensive, actually, with Denmark. Simon Kjær, 25% owned.
Yeah, he's got big ownership now.
Looks a lock at 4.5. And I like the left back, Maheli. Well, I don't think I'm pronouncing correctly.
Mahel.
Very forward thinking from full back position. I may go with him as well.
Okay.
Actually, I would probably rather go with him on Kjær the more I've looked into him over the last couple of days. There's every chance I'm going to go with both, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, Kjær and Schmeichel, I'll end up possibly, if I've got Schmeichel in goal and one other defender, I'm double defensive as well, but whether or not I play them both.
There's another one that really appealed for the Limitless 2 crowd. Yeah. Finland first and then Russia third. And I think they're probably still going to want a result in the final game. I think that there's every chance that they could beat Belgium in Copenhagen, personally, but most people disagree with that. So I think most people will be thinking they'll need a result in the final group game to be sure. It is in Copenhagen against Russia. So I think, look, getting Denmark players for Finland and Russia in Copenhagen is quite appealing. I like them. I could well go with a Denmark triple up.
Nice. Group C. So, North Macedonia. Congratulations to them getting to the tournament. We're not picking any of their players, are we? There's
a couple of interesting ones defensively. Goran Pandev is the name that people will be familiar with. 6.5 million forward, playing his first major tournament, age 67. There were 2 defensive players that are quite interesting. Alioski of Leeds, obviously, is 4.5 million.
4% at the moment.
Well, I think it's part 4%, and it's been on the grow because he took a penalty from the other day. So a lot of people think he may be on the pens, but I would sit back at that and think, well, how many pens are Macedonia going to get? However, again, we're in the first half of the players here, so he is someone you can pick in and obviously sub out if you want to / need to. And I think the most interesting 4 million player in the game might be at North Macedonia, which is the right back Ristovski, who I know the Happy Hour boys who did all their podcasts found out with their Macedonia rep that this guy's absolutely locked at right back, basically, to play. He's 4 million, 3% owned at the moment. Be careful, because there is a Ristovski and a Rastovski, I think, in the Macedonia squad. And I think they're the same price. But go with the one that's 3% owned.
Just base it on ownership and off you go. But in that group, obviously Holland, Netherlands are the big boys. You'd expect them to go through. I've had Memphis Depay in my original draft, and I just think, well, from what I've heard in terms of set pieces, free kicks, penalties, main man, 10 million.
He's on everything.
Just get him, basically, and be done with it.
The doubt about it is, for me, and I'm surprised that his ownership's actually only 21%. The doubt about it for me now is, though, the more I'm looking into it, it's beginning to look like Weghorst might play up front with him, and he's 7 million.
Right.
And he's decent. He's a very different player to Depay. I mean, he couldn't be more different in terms of style. But 3 million saving for his forward partner might be quite interesting, actually. Might go that route. That's what I need to. I need to be confident that Weghorst is going to play, because then that opens me up to get another more powerful midfielder, and that's the decision I need to make. The other thing is, if I go Weghorst, it might lead me on to Kane, whereas at the moment I'm probably without Kane, and again that comes back to a captaincy idea around that. So the only reason I can see me not having Depay is if I end up going with Weghorst and make that saving. There's a few midfielders I like. Wijnaldum is 8 million, which for the FPLers out there, straight away you go, woof.
Yeah.
He plays a very different position for Holland to what he does for Liverpool.
Okay.
And I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
He's the one that really breaks out from midfield and joins in. He's got a far better goal scoring record for Holland than Liverpool. So actually 8 million is okay. And Frankie de Jong, 7 million is decent as well, who's got more ownership than Wijnaldum at the moment, 13% owned. I don't think I'm going to go for either of them, but I wouldn't rule it out. De Ligt has got massive ownership at the moment, 37%, 5.5, but we think Owen Vindal is going to play left wing back, 4.5 million, 9% owned, and I'll probably be going with him.
Yeah,
he's probably the one in my squad who I'm probably least confident is going to start at the moment with what I've probably got. I'd love to go with one of the goalkeepers. Krul, you think plays over Stekelenburg, wouldn't you?
No, I'm not. Because what did
I'm talking to the
say?
listeners at this point.
He's in the warm-up games? He said they were both going to get a couple of games each or whatever, right? So you don't know who's going to play over who, but. Krul's the penalty save expert, right? So maybe keep him in.
Would you consider, and this is not really the advisable way to play this game, but would you consider going with both?
No. It's not the advisable way to play this game.
If you get it wrong, then that auto subs for you, right?
It's true. You're going to get one or the other. It's not a bad shout. It's whether or not you're happy with Netherlands keeping clean sheets. I mean, I think they keep a clean sheet against North Macedonia, highly likely. Austria as well. Ukraine, I'm less convinced that they will. It's not. If you're really struggling to get your head around the substitutions and how you can do them, you just want to keep the game simple, then it's not a bad shout. But it's not for me necessarily.
I think I'll go Depay and Vindal. I think that's what I'm going to end up with. I think.
Austria.
I'm very interested in Austrian players. Purely, again, I think they're a good team for those on the limitless match day 2 idea, because you start with North Macedonia and you finish with Ukraine. You can avoid the Holland game. Daniel Bachmann is becoming more and more into my thoughts. 4.5 million goalkeeper who broke into the Watford team this year. 1% owned. Like him as an option. Hinteregger, 4.5 million, 3% owned. I'm probably not going to go with, because I think I'm more likely to go with Bachmann the longer it goes on, actually. I like Sabitzer at 8 million, 1% owned. Anybody who watched Austria against England last week will know that he does not hesitate to shoot from range and really doesn't fuck about. Good player. It's been well documented that David Alaba plays a very different position for Austria than he does for Bayern München. He's 5.5 million. We expect him probably to be on the left of midfield, 18% owned. You can't argue with the price, actually. I think at 5.5 he's probably the best at that price, particularly on people on that strategy that I'm looking at. Arnautovic did make an appearance at the weekend. He's likely to be fit. 7 million.
Not for me.
2% owned. And Kalajic, who, again, anybody who watched the game against England might not have seen this fella before. He's 7.5, 1% owned up front. He's an absolute unit. I think Austria are one of the best teams to target if you're looking for differentials and you're on a limitless match day 2 idea. It's not beyond reason. Hold on, this is where people stop listening. It's not beyond reason I start with 3 of them.
Interesting. Talk to me about Ukraine, the final team in.
And I don't think they're very good, by the way.
But it serves a purpose in the fantasy game. I'm looking at the Ukraine, and obviously Zinchenko's got decent ownership at 8%. He's not their most highly owned. Sudakov, probably just because he's a 4 million midfielder, is at 10%, and people are struggling with budget. I can't see myself starting without Andrei Yarmolenko.
Okay. I've got about 80 players written down here. He ain't one of them.
He's the same. He's a greedy bastard that shoots on sight, and his goal involvement and his importance to Ukraine is decent.
Far prefer Milanovsky at 7 million, 2% owned. Talented player.
Okay.
Oh, that sharp Yarmolenko, doesn't it?
Nah, it makes no difference to me. I'll end up starting with Yarmolenko. I know he will. Anyway, so...
I think Ukraine are, again, sorry to keep referencing my strategy, but Ukraine have got North Macedonia in the second game, so there's every chance there's a treble up on the Limitless where you could go, I might go Milanovsky, Yarmolenko, take a punt on an expensive Ukrainian player that you wouldn't otherwise.
Yep.
And Zinchenko. Zinchenko plays in midfield for Ukraine, and he is marked as a defender, 5.5. Very interesting. If people want to go with that, I don't mind it. I think that's the weakest group. That group with Holland. I don't think they're great. I don't think there's much happening with Ukraine and Austria. There's obviously an element of unknown with North Macedonia. We know they won in Germany a few months ago, but they're going to be rank outsiders. Anything they achieve in this tournament, I think they'll be very, very pleased to get something. They're here for the ride. Doesn't mean they can't do anything. Everybody said 5 years ago, Northern Ireland in a group with Poland, Ukraine and Germany would be lucky to get a point, right? They made the last 16. One win can get you out, potentially. I'm not thrilled by this Ukraine team, but I'll be watching them very closely Sunday night against Holland, because I think they're very much of interest for match day 2 against North Macedonia.
Yeah. Group D. England are in it, so let's start with England. There's no one that's leapt off the page for me.
I'll let you talk for a minute.
Well, there's no one that's leapt off the page for me. Harry Kane is the bookies' favourite for Golden Boots, but I don't know.
But they forgot about Kylian Mbappe. Yeah, I know.
We don't know the formation. I feel like England are a hard team to predict. You've been doing it on pods galore. So, yeah, I just don't know. There's no one that's particularly out of position or cheap. I think the one that really jumps off the page is Jack Grealish at 7.5. If you could say to me...
Do you think he'll start?
If you said to me Southgate's going to... No, I don't think he will. But if I knew Jack Grealish was going to start, I would buy Jack Grealish.
I absolutely agree with that. I'm not convinced. And actually...
Yeah, there's no one I'm convinced by. Maybe defence, actually.
I'm more convinced that Foden will start. It's not that they can't both start, by the way. I'm more convinced that Foden will start, and I don't mind his price at 8 million at all. He's got 12% ownership, which other than Mason Mount's the most of those kind of we were unsure of in that area. I don't think I'd even take a chance on Foden. I'm pretty sure that Foden will play, but I don't think it's worth the risk. Mason Mount, 30% owned. That's a standout, 7 million. I think with the squad that England have picked now, he's likely to be on the majority of set pieces as well.
Do you think so?
Yeah. And we saw... in the World Cup in 2018 that England will utilise some unique ideas from set pieces. So I think Mount will be on the majority of them, actually, particularly if Kieran Trippier doesn't play.
Okay.
I think he'll probably be on, I would have thought, most of the corners. So Mason Mount, 7 million, I think he's a very good shout. I wouldn't rule out Jordan Pickford as an idea. It's probably more than what you want to be spending on Jordan Pickford. But England are very capable of keeping clean sheets in spite of defensive problems in this group. And I think at 5.5, you could do worse I think he really is one for that kind of hereditary idea where you want a goalkeeper playing in one of the last 3 groups, for example. We've spoken previously about not knowing what's happening with Spain. Do you want a keeper from the group of death? And it might just be that Pickford therefore falls into place for people. Luke Shaw at 6 million... I kind of highlighted because he's 16% owned. There's been a large rumour in the British media over the last 24 hours that it may, be a back three for England on Sunday. And it might include Luke Shaw at left-sided centre-back, which is what I'd suggested on my stream this time last week, is what I would like to see. I would have no problem with a back three of Shaw, Stones, Walker. Absolutely fine with that, which then presumably means wing-backs would be Chilwell and Reece James. Now, if we get Reece James as a wing back at 5 million, that's very interesting.
All over that, yeah.
But are we going to get the news before Friday? I don't think so.
No.
If I knew, if someone said on Friday this is the likely team, Reece James, I would maybe take a chance on it. Reece James at 5 million. I think it's a standout one. If you want to go safest for England defensively, it's Stones, 5.5.
He'll go up for set pieces and stuff as well. He's scored a few goals this season for City, so I don't mind John Stones at 5.5. Actually, is quite decent. Again, I'd prefer Reece James, but I don't think I can predict he's going to play. Our neighbours Scotland. Andy Robertson's got up to 16% ownership at 5.5 million.
I'm not sure about that.
It's not Liverpool. He's not wearing a Liverpool shirt in this game. So, other than that, Kieran Tierney's done okay. He's cheaper at 5 million, but obviously he plays centrally, not as a left back. And then it's just basically bits and bobs really for the rest of the Scottish squad.
Again, no, they're another one because they'll play at home in match days 1 and 3 against Czech Republic and Croatia. If you're on the limit list too, you miss the England game at Wembley. And that possibly makes them interesting with 2 home ties. I don't think I start with any. I think Marshall at 4.5 is okay and is likely to start in goal. Robertson, Tierney, I think more than 4.5 for a Scottish defender. As I said, when there's so many good 4.5s, I couldn't justify. McGinn at 7.5 shouldn't be ruled out, I don't think. 1% owned, even though he's the most expensive player. The one that's interesting, I think, is Ryan Fraser, who I think is probably unlikely to start, but if he did, might do in a front 2. And at 6.5 million, I think that would be quite interesting. It's not worth the gamble for me, though, I don't think so. I'm unlikely to go with them.
Even the Lyndon Dykes, not interesting. 6.5 million as a punt.
No, I would go Che Adams off the 2.
Okay. But they are later in the week and they're cheap. So it's one of those where if one of your midfielders hasn't performed and you fancy a punt and just chuck someone on, I think not bad.
In terms of Group D players, they're probably still likely to be in your starting team. You're most likely to have players on the bench, I think, from Groups E and F, most likely. So, again, you're probably still at the stage where you can just about still punt it and get away with it.
Czech Republic. Tell me you're owning Thomas Souček.
No. No. 6.5 is reasonable. I can't argue.
I think I will own him, to be honest with you.
And are you going to get Soufal as well, aren't you, at 5 million?
No.
No?
No.
Why not?
I don't know. I've got better other defenders. You getting Soufal?
I love the way Suj's been filling his team in during this podcast.
Yeah, I'm just chucking people in and out as we're going along. Soufal's all right. 5 million is not a bad price, I don't think, for Soufal. But do I trust Czech Republic to keep clean sheets massively? Probably not, to be honest with you.
Again,
so, no.
There's so many good 4.5s.
Yeah.
Not for me. No, and they're the only 2 I would probably consider. There's a midfielder, Holes, 4.5. I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about. It's got 7% ownership. You're probably better off coming right down to a 4.0 if you want to do that. I'd prefer not to be having, just generally speaking, 4.5 million midfielders and stuff. There isn't anything that stands out that's
decent.
Going to kind of have a 7-game period like Etienne Capoue did for Watford a few years ago. I don't foresee that sort of thing happening. So Czechs largely overlook, I think.
Croatia. Tell me you're buying Luka Modric just for old time's sake, James. No nostalgic.
What would be nostalgic for me is if he didn't play on Sunday. Make me feel better about us keeping the ball. No, I won't be buying Luka Modric at 8.5. I'm a huge Ivan Perisic fan. I think he's been such a top player over the last 10 years or so. Probably on the fade now a little bit. I mean, I'd go Perisic over Modric all day long at 8.5. I don't mind Rebic at 7 million up front, but doing a bit of kind of reading and stuff, there doesn't even seem certainty that he's going to play, actually. He had a good tournament a few years ago in Russia. So Croatia's a no for me as well. They're not as strong as 3 years ago.
What about then?
But they won't get beat by England on Sunday. Because we don't win that European Championship opening games. We've never won one, you know that?
Really?
I hope that's not in the England quiz. We've never won an opening game at European Championship.
Wow. Okay, fun fact.
Ever.
Group E is an interesting group. It's got obviously Spain's group, but Spain are not as strong as they have been in the past. Normally in previous years we'll be looking to Spain to fill your boots time, but where do you go with Spain here?
But that's not even the problem with Spain. The problem with Spain is who's going to fucking make it to Monday night is what's the problem.
Yes, true. So, this whole outbreak that's happened.
Just for those who are unaware, Sergio Busquets failed a COVID test, I believe, on Monday. And then yesterday it was reported that Leeds United's Diego Llorente, who was in the squad, also failed a COVID test, it means that between now and the game, the players can only train individually. They cannot work on any patterns in a group or anything. They've got till Saturday night to change any members of the squad, should they want to. They have called up 17 players in basically a B squad.
Spain fucked. That's it.
Not fucked. Listen, their under-21s played Lithuania on Tuesday night. I know it's not the best nation in the world, but they won 4-0, right? Still give them a bit of a pounding. Spain, if they had to play...
I saw 4 now. It's got called up the other day.
Listen, if Spain have to pick between their 20th and 40th best players, they're still going to be better than a lot of the nations, by the way. But it's made me very nervous about people who are really like Torres at 8 million, Olmo at 7 million, Pedri at 6 million. I think these are all decent targets, particularly in the midfield area, where trying to find goal scoring midfielders is difficult. I mean, for me, in Torres and Olmo, they've got two of the best there in terms of what's available, factoring in price as well. And I'm not sure if I'm going to have the cojones to go with them, because as well, once we're in Group E as well, I'm not binning them at this point. No. They're going in, and if they were Group A, B, or something like that, I would go with them. Mm. But I think there's a danger here. I think there's a danger here that you end up starting with Spain players on your bench and then end up not using them. Yeah. They don't play first on Monday as well. They play at 8 o'clock at night. So you're not going to get a leaked lineup or anything like that. So I'm very nervous about them. And I think news on them in the next 24 hours is going to have a large influence on what my final draft will be. Because I would quite like to have Torres and Olmo. Pau Torres at 4.5, 23% owned defensively. It looks like he's going to start as long as he's available to start. Mm. I can't make a case for anyone not to have him at 4.5. It looks like he's going to play. Jordi Alba at 6 million's got decent ownership, 12% owned. But he's possibly in a little bit of competition with the Valencia left wing, but I think he's still at Valencia Gaia. You would think Jordi Alba's nailed, but that's not necessarily the case. Everybody talking about Moreno a lot up front. Now, if you knew he was going to play at 6.5, you're all over it. He's had a brilliant season at Villarreal. I think Morata will play. Like it's another. There's so many like that where you think, oh, he's great price, and you look about and you think, oh, I'm not sure he's going to play. And in this format, it just becomes a headache, and even more so with Spain, like I said, because there's a good chance you're starting with these guys on the bench anyway. They're the ones, Group E's and F, you want to be taking less punts and being kind of more locked with your team at that stage. So I could have anything between 0 and 3 Spain players, I think, but it'll be from that group. Rodri's got 12% ownership. Don't quite understand the reason for that, other than I guess a little bit like Kante.
Ball recovery in Champions League or something.
He'll be a well-known player, played in the Champions League final, etc. He's locked to play, I guess, because of Busquets obviously failing the COVID test. I think Busquets and Llorente have to miss at least the first 2, I think.
The other teams in the group, I mean, Slovakia, you're talking about 2 guys, the Happy Hour pod, no one worth picking, and I don't know if there's anyone with players with lower ownership in the entire game. I mean, 2 players with 1% ownership and nothing else. Skriniar and Dubravka.
I don't mind Dubravka. Isn't he 4.5?
5 million.
Can I be honest with you, they're the only team I literally haven't written one player down.
Okay. You can be honest with me. Leave it out then.
What price is Skriniar?
I've just taken him off my screen, James. So,
sorry, mate. Don't get him in, but...
he is... he's just... Good old stuff.
No one cares what Milan Skriniar's price is. But if Tottenham want to pay Inter Milan the asking price, I won't complain.
Yeah.
No interest in Slovakia at all, I'm afraid.
And Poland in that group as well.
I feel so offensive there.
Poland, I mean, Lewandowski's got a Bayern Munich price, not a Poland price, hasn't he? 11.5 million.
It is a Bayern Munich price, yes, but again, he's another one who falls into that. You miss the Spain game, you start with Slovakia, then you play Sweden last if you want to go with that strategy. So again, it brings Poland players onto the radar. There were 1 in each position which are of interest to me. Szczesny in goal, 5 million, although can't stand the pricks. I'd rather not have him in my fantasy team. Jan Bednarek, 4.5 million. Southampton defender, 7% owned. Probably Probably don't be paying more than 4.5 for a Polish defender. I think it's reasonable. Zielinski is a player I like. 7 million, 2% owned. That's under the radar, I think. I think if I don't have Lewandowski, I'll go Zielinski. But I think if I have Zielinski, I won't have Lewandowski. I think it's probably where I'm likely
one
to
or
go.
The other. You are going to go with a Polish player.
I'd be very surprised if I don't, actually.
Okay.
I just think that the way that format works out for me is two decent fixtures then. Sweden are not as strong as they have been in previous years either. I think I would expect Poland to finish in the top 2 in this group. I think Lewandowski could be a very powerful captain in the first match day, actually. And it's that where I've kind of said Kane versus Holland for the captaincy on a Sunday. If I've got concerns about Spain on Monday as well, looking at Lewandowski and going, yep, that will do the job for me, captaincy on Monday. It might be the last one for me. So I want it to be a powerful one. I think I'm going to go with Lewandowski.
Do you think Poland will finish second in that group? Or?
Yes. Yeah. But if Spain are in super problems, I wouldn't be hugely surprised if they finish first.
Yeah. And Sweden make up that group. They've also got Sodor ownership in any of their players.
Well, the one that would have interested me most is Kulevski, 7 million midfielder, and he's also failed a COVID test.
Oh.
So he's fucking out as well. So that's one of their best players is going to be missing for that game against Spain on Monday evening. Isaac, 8 million up front, is not a player I know a lot about. In all honesty, he's 2% owned. I think at that stage I'd rather be taking the gamble that Moreno would play personally. Danielson at 4.5 might be an outside interesting one at 0%, but even within that group, I would prefer to go for Bednarek.
Right. And last but not least, the group of death, James. Group F.
Fucked. Someone's getting fucked.
Let's start with the favourites.
Hungary.
France. I mean, Hungary have got the home game, so you never know. France. Priced accordingly to the fact that they are favourites. But is there anyone in there that you think is underpriced? I mean, I'm going to go without Mbappe. I mean, Mbappe's at 35% ownership, Kante at 44%. I'm going to have neither of those two. Varane, 11%, and then Benzema, 10%.
There's every chance I'm not having anybody from any of the 4 teams in this group because I just think they've got tough games against each other. I think Germany are being extremely underrated here. We've seen players like Havertz, Werner do bits for Chelsea at the end of the season and stuff. Have got good players and not as strong as they have been. Germany have got a major issue at the moment in the fullback areas, which I think might be an issue for them, where they're very indecisive about what they want to be, I think, stylistically at the moment. And it's coming to the end of Joachim Löw's reign. Hansi Flick's obviously going to take over after this tournament. Got an issue in the fullback area. I think it's worth noting. But they've decent fantasy assets. I don't quite know why Joshua Kimmich's ownership is 24% at 6 million personally. Gundogan, 7.5 would interest me more. I'd rather pay the extra. Havertz, 9 million, 2% owned. Sane, Serge.
I'm going to have Leroy Sane.
I know you're going to have Leroy Sane just for the crack.
Yeah.
9.5. Personally, I'd rather have Serge Gnabry. I'd really like that. Serge Gnabry at 9.5. If they had a better group, I'd be all over that. I think he'll play through the middle for Germany. Werner, 8.5 as a forward, actually.
Cheap. Decent.
Yeah. But it's a tough group. It's worth remembering they'll play all their games in Munich, so they've not got to do the travelling or anything. They won't be able to have big capacity. I think it's only about 12,000, 15,000, and the Allianz is a big arena as well, right? But they will be playing in front of a home crowd. Defensively, I think you'd go Rudiger, 5.5, or Neuer, 6 million in goal. But I think most people are probably largely going to overlook Germany. I think Germany will probably finish above Portugal in this group.
Portugal.
I think that Portugal will get out as well. By the way.
Yeah, I mean the best place loser.
I think in this group the big 3 will take points off each other. Like I could see a circumstance where Portugal beat France and then Germany beat Portugal and France beat Germany. That wouldn't surprise me if you had a kind of.
And they all beat Hungary. Yeah. Probably.
Go on, here we go. Right, shock prediction for match day 1: Hungary to get something against Portugal on Tuesday.
Talk about Portugal first.
And yes, I did watch the highlights of Portugal last night. Look very impressive.
Did they?
It's against Israel though.
Where'd you go with Portugal? I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo, 12 million. I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you, mate.
Oh.
Yeah, 2 meters. There are some very interesting players here where I think price-wise, I don't think it quite works. They've got a difficult group as well. I think Portugal, a lot of people are just literally looking at the first fixture and not necessarily looking at the two afterwards. Which, listen, for a lot of people, I know Rob FPL Panda from the Happy Hour, he's looking to go limitless to wildcard 3, and he's kind of presetting his idea for that.
So he can pile into
So he's
Portugal.
basically, absolutely, and I completely understand that. And I think if you were doing that, Cancelo over Diaz for me. Diaz 41% owned, Cancelo 22% owned, same price. I think Cancelo worth the risk of the extra, personally.
You think he'll definitely play, though?
Scored an absolutely beautiful goal last night. Do I think he'll definitely play? I think, personally, that on what I've seen this season, if they pick Nelson Semedo over Cancelo, I think the manager is instantly putting his job at risk.
Okay.
That's not to say he won't do that. But Cancelo's got to play, surely.
Ronaldo's at 27% ownership.
The beauty of Ronaldo in this, and we're talking about having players in the final two groups kind of being locked players, to bring him off the bench, captain him on that final day. That's the one concern for me of not having him, is if we have a week where the template captaincies fail, he's going to be monster captained on that final day.
Yeah.
And I'm probably not going to have him, and not going to have any of his teammates either. And I'm a little bit conscious of that, but I feel like this is where I'm probably going to go a little bit different. Is possibly no Portugal. I wouldn't put anybody off going Ronaldo. Obviously, if you can pay the money, you want to pay the money. He's one of the greatest players that ever lived. This probably won't be his last tournament. I assume it will be his last European Championship. He is level for total goals in European Championship history with Michel Platini. You know he's definitely getting at least one over the next couple of weeks. That's a certainty.
For sure, yeah.
And he'll let everybody know about it when he does, I'm certain as well. A lot of people are going to go with Ronaldo. I actually think that ownership number of 27% will increase over the next 24 hours or so. Bruno at 10.5 at 18% is interesting.
10.5 is what he started FPL at.
I think he's one. If I end up going, say, with Weghorst over Depay, then Bruno comes right back onto my radar. I think he scored 2 brilliant goals last night. Obviously, he won't be on the Fernandes. He won't be on the penalties Ronaldo will take and win it. I guess Ronaldo will take the majority of the free kicks as well, probably. So you are taking something away from his Manchester United play, but they're a good side.
Yeah.
My concern with Portugal is that when they play teams of equal or better ability, their revert to type is to sit back defensively. It's difficult, though, when you look at a team that's got perhaps Fernandes, Bernardo Silva, João Felix, Diogo Jota, a combination 3 of the final 4 I mentioned there, and you think, well, how can they be? I'm just not sure stylistically that they'll be quite what people expect. Now, I might have a very bad read on that. Jota 8.5, Felix 8.5. I don't know who's going to play out the two. I think Bernardo Silva plays at the same price, but you'd rather have one of the other two.
Yeah.
I think if I knew which one of them was going to play, I think that's where I'd probably take my punt. I might go back for Bruno. I don't like the fact that they're going to play in Budapest against a full capacity opposition is being overlooked. I know that they're not the best side. Hungary, we've seen that and drew with Ireland the other night, 0-0. They're going to struggle for goals. Do have a good goalkeeper, Hungary. I just wonder if they might start slow and the pressure really be on that first game. And then, like I said, they go defensive then against Germany and France in the last 2. I don't want a Portugal player that flops for me and then I've got him against France in the final game day. And I might go without.
And last but not least, Hungary. Avoid?
Did we do France?
We did France.
What did we talk about?
We talked about Mbappe. We'll come back to France. Maybe we didn't do enough about France. I said I would start with the favourites. And you were saying you're not going to have any.
So we've got this midfielder, Nago, who's 4 million, whose name is not John Nagy.
But
I found out why I got confused about this on the other post. There's a player called Adam Nagy.
Right.
And we've got a patron called John Nagy. Good afternoon, John. There's another shout out for you. No, there's no Hungary players here. Let's talk about France.
France. Are you going to go with Mbappe or Benzema or Griezmann or none of the above? I mean, where'd you go? I would personally probably just go Griezmann as the cheapest. Oh, he's not cheaper than Benzema, but...
No, I really wanted to have a cheeky look at Benzema because I think 10 million is a very fair price. But picked up an injury the other day, and I think it's a no-go in that case for me. Giroud at 8 million, I tell you what, it could be interesting, mate. 1% owned. If suddenly,
is he?
Well, the way they've been setting up is with a flatter midfield three in front of a back four, and with Griezmann behind Mbappe and Benzema. It's basically like a diamond with Griezmann at the tip of it, right?
Yeah.
So if that's the way they decided they're going to play, if Benzema's out for 2 or 3 games,
yeah,
Giroud at 8 million, he's elite at near post run. He scored another brilliant goal in the Stade de France the other night with a near post run. Then followed it up with a second goal. He's a frustrating player, but he's a good finisher. 8 million forward for the best team in the competition is decent, mate.
Yeah.
If Benzema's going to be out for a while, but that's what I think I'd need to hear. For me, who ideally doesn't want to use the wild card in match week 3, I don't really want to be taking the risks. And I realise I might get there and half my team's getting rotated. If that's the case, I'll have to deal with that problem then. But I think I'd have to be if Benzema's out for 2 weeks or so to feel comfortable to go Giroud. I think if Benzema doesn't play, Giroud will play. I think that's how they're going to play, Suj. So I think that's interesting. Defensively,
Kimpembe,
yeah, interesting. I think he'll play and he's probably the outstanding defensive choice. Hugo at 6 million is decent. I think if you didn't have the wild card or the unlimited transfers before game weeks, before the round of 16, I'd be more inclined to start with France players because I think they're going all the way.
Yeah.
They'd be my favourites to win the tournament. I don't know if they're going to go off big in this group stage. And I'll tell you what, we've seen plenty of favourites, teams who everybody's been absolutely certain would walk tournaments, go out in group stages. They've walked into a group of death. What happens if they get beat by Germany next Tuesday? Pressure's on, isn't it?
Massively. And even if they draw, it makes it particularly tight. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
I think I'm likely to avoid that group, which, as I said, I'm not happy with because it leaves me with one less final captaincy option. And it's the Ronaldo one that's the scary, I think.
That's the groups, James. That's
nice.
The watch list all run down. You definitely give me enough to think about. And basically, I won't listen. And I'll just end up getting Yarmolenko, Leroy Sané.
You've got to come to this podcast tomorrow armed with what your team's going to be.
Oh, it's going to be done,
subject to Italy lineup, which I think is fair.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, at the moment, I'm thinking of double Italian defence plus Kimpembe and fill the rest with 4.5s. Mason Mount, Leroy Sané, Yarmolenko, Thomas Souček and one other. And then Depay, Lukaku, Ronaldo or whoever else I can afford in that third striker slot.
I've basically told everyone what mine is already anyway. I just need to decide now.
Yeah, exactly. Tomorrow, stay tuned. James and I will be revealing our final drafts. Not sure what time. What time should we put it out, mate? After the deadline?
When it's ready. No, put it out at like 7:30. Can you fit it in time? No, it'll be out early enough for you guys.
Indeed. In the meantime, stay safe wherever you are. Of course, do all the other stuff that I say on every other podcast. Subscribe and visit our Patreon and whatever else.
All that
but
shit.
Mainly enjoy the sunshine. Stay safe. Ciao for now. Don't do a Spain.
Don't do a Spain.
Yeah.
I got my second vaccine booked in next Wednesday.
Nice.
I booked it in at 4:40. It's right in between games, isn't it? I should be all right. Cue music, please, man, child.